Greetings, class. I just wanted to talk about here quickly about some things to look for in your essay, some things that you don't want to do, and some things you do want to make sure that you're doing. And so we're going to take a look at thesis statement and introduction a little bit and conclusion in your essay. So since this is our first big essay for this class, let's take a look at thesis statement. So the first thing you want to make sure that you're not doing is that you're making a thesis statement of facts. So you want to make sure that you're not doing this. So here's an example. The movie The Truman Show is about how Truman Burbank escapes from his false reality. Well, that's not really a thesis statement because it's a statement of fact. There's really no, that's not up for argument. So that's, Truman does escape from his show. It is a false reality, and he does escape. So you want to make sure that you don't do a thesis statement that is fact. The whole point is that a thesis is a statement of opinion in which you use examples, quotes, reasonable arguments, your own opinions to help support your thesis. So a thesis statement should be able to be an opinion in which you can argue one side or the other. So you want to make sure that you're doing that for your essay, that it is indeed a statement of opinion that can be, that you use examples from the movie and the allegory of the cave to help support. So another thing that you don't want to do, you don't want to start off your thesis statement like this. In this essay, I will show, you don't want to start off like this. This is not a personal narrative. This is not a first person type of paper. So you don't want to use the word I in a researched argument type of essay. So you want to make sure that a thesis statement doesn't have any I's in it or in this essay type things. So make sure your essay doesn't start off like that. Most of the time people start off like this because they're not sure how to start off their thesis statement. So they start off with this part, and then usually the parts that come after it is actually the thesis statement itself. And you can always, most of the time, get rid of this part, and then the rest of it is your thesis statement. So make sure you don't use the word I, and that you don't start off like this for this example. So let's take a look at a couple other papers that students have done in the past. Here's one called Change in Pleasantville. Good sized introduction, which is good. But if you look at the thesis statement here, without change, the world would be the same. The way Pleasantville was before David and Jennifer arrived. Pleasantville shows emotional, physical, and mental changes in the character. I know we're not doing the Pleasantville movie, but you get the idea here of this thesis statement. This thesis statement here is not probing deep enough. There are emotional, physical, and mental changes that happen in this movie, so that's not really up to dispute. So this thesis statement lacks, probing deep, looking at, what this movie says about the world and stuff like that. So, again, you want to make sure that you have a good, in-depth thesis statement, and this would be an example of not that. So, okay, here's another example of a thesis, an introduction. Again, this introduction, this first line here should probably be tabbed over. Make sure the first line of each paragraph is tabbed, and also make sure there isn't any extra spaces between the end of one paragraph and the beginning. See how this paragraph ends, and right on the next line the next paragraph begins? That's how you should do it. So but if you look at this introduction, it starts off, their thesis statement starts off, while this essay is not intended to address every aspect of change, it will narrow down to how the two teens, David and Jennifer, changed the isolated city of Pleasantville. So again, you don't want to start off all this essay is, or in my essay I will, that type of stuff. So again, this is another example of how you don't want to start off like that. So kind of keep that in mind. And then here's an example of a conclusion. Your conclusion can start off, in conclusion, the movie of Pleasantville presents many issues that were unpopular at the time of the movie. So for example, you could start off your conclusion, this way. In conclusion, the movie The Truman Show presents many issues, that we find in everyday life and stuff like that. So this is, a good start to a conclusion as well. Okay, and then another one here that you don't want to do. Oh, we already did that one. Okay, so here's another one. Sorry, I got off track there. So here's another one. Basically, with this introduction, it's not long enough. It's not very long. If you're looking at a 4-page paper, 3 sentences or 2 sentences here is not enough. So basically, in this introduction, the introduction is not long enough. You want to make sure it's a good full size paragraph. Maybe these two combined would be a little bit better size. And here, this example, the student wrote, "The devil you know is better than the one you don't." Great creative introduction. The movie Pleasantville was written and directed by Gary Ross in the year 1998. The movie begins in America in the 1990s. David and Jennifer unexpectedly find themselves transported and stuck in the 1950s sitcom. The journey takes them from a broken home and troubled society to the unrealistic land of Leave It to Beaver. So again, your introduction can be kind of a background. It can kind of movie review the movie a little bit. That's what the introduction is for, is to kind of set up the thesis statement. The tranquil community of Pleasantville has no idea that their sleepy old town is about to be quickly changed. Individuals in Pleasantville begin to change. The town fathers strive to gain control of any further changes because they want Pleasantville to stay the same way it has been. So they set out to convince those who are not colored of the grave and potential evil consequences of changing Pleasantville. So again, it kind of gives a little bit of a review of what the movie is about to set up the thesis statement. So here, this ignites a power struggle between those who strongly desire to hold on to old ideas and those who embracing new ideas. And then this all leads up to the thesis statement here in red. The governing theme of the movie addresses the myth that the 1950s was a time of bliss when in fact it was a time of hidden inequality. So good thesis statement. It's probing a deeper issue, something bigger, talking about our society, our world, us as humans as well. So again, if you look at this introduction, and I'll post this essay on there as another student example, but it reviews the movie, it leads up to the thesis statement, and then here we go. The governing theme of the movie addresses the myth that the 1950s was a time of bliss when in fact it was a time of hidden inequality. So very good introduction, good thesis statement. And then of course, if you look at the end of this paper, although some people have learned lessons from the past, they still seem to need to cling to the old ideas, which may not brings them comfort and security. It seems that individuals in Pleasantville are handcuffed. So again, notice how she's kind of reinterpreting the introduction. She kind of restates her main idea, her thesis, into the conclusion, but wrapping it up, talking about our own society as well. Talking about choice and opportunity, which were huge in the movie Pleasantville. So again, the conclusion is just as important as the introduction. Don't forget that. You don't want to write just a 2-sentence conclusion. You want to make sure that your conclusion is almost as long as your introduction. So watch out for that. Make sure that your conclusion restates or reinterprets your introduction and thesis, and kind of wraps it up nicely at the end of your paper. So again, make sure you're spending some time on your conclusion as well. So those are just some tips about your paper: introduction, conclusion, and thesis statement. And again, I put a PowerPoint in there, the recap, the Truman Show character names. You don't have to look at it if you don't want to, but it does show just kind of a recap of all the characters, their names, because when you talk about the Truman Show in your essay, you shouldn't just be saying, oh, this guy said this, or this character said that, or Truman's friend. You should be referring to the characters' names from the movie in there as well. So I would take off points if you can't correctly identify a character's name. So make sure you review this, and it kind of gives you some hints there as well. So, all right, if you have any other questions, let me know. I'll post this up on our class here, and if you got any other questions, let me know. All right, thanks, class.